Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are talking about 5G here in the United States because your next 5G cellular provider could be the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, and I'm not kidding. Here's what's going on. Now, this is coming from multiple sources, but Axios really seems to have a handle on this, so I'm cribbing primarily from them. Now, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows is leaning on the Pentagon to move ahead with a plan to stand up a 5G wireless network. And the idea, despite opposition from obviously the private sector and some of the government, could basically outlive the Trump administration, whether it's ending, at the beginning of next year or in 4 years from now. Now, here's why this matters. The Department of Defense could lease out capacity to wireless carriers and other companies in need of obviously a very large range, high-speed, 5G platform, which is something obviously that technology promises. Now, the Trump administration was actually considering this back in 2018, and back then they laid out two different options. And so the first option back then was that the U.S. government pays for and builds a single network, which would then be essentially an unprecedented nationalization of what is historically private infrastructure, which is telecom. The alternative plan that was proposed was where wireless providers would build their own 5G infrastructure that essentially compete with one another, which is the traditional sense of the word. Although the analysis at the time said that the downside of this was that it would take longer and probably cost the government more. It argues that one of the pros of that plan is that it would cause, quote unquote, less commercial disruption to the wireless carriers than actually having the government build its own infrastructure. Now let's head back to 2020 and let's see what's going on here, because Axios is reporting on quite a bit here. The DoD is gathering input until next week on whether and how to move forward with this plan, which, if it happens, would likely take the form of a private company landing a federal contract to operate a 5G network on the government's behalf, essentially using those airwaves that are going to be then locked to the Department of Defense. Now, the upshot to this would be a public-private partnership that is analogous to FirstNet, the dedicated communications network for first responders that AT&T built under a federal contract. Wireless providers are firmly opposed to this idea, according to Axios, viewing it as government handpicking essentially a single winner in the development of a nationwide 5G infrastructure, although some in Washington believe they could change their tune essentially and vie for the contract if the DoD moves ahead with the plan. Meaning they are complaining about it now, but if the DoD says, yep, we're going to do this, they will all throw their hats into the ring. Now, the White House is urging the Department of Defense, according to sources that were talking to Axios, to move quickly to follow the outstanding request for information with an actual solicitation for proposals from the companies that would actually do this work. Now, the DoD is already drafting that request, and that is according to the Wall Street Journal as reporting last Friday. And one telecom industry official that Axios spoke with expects that request to be issued within the next couple of weeks, meaning shortly before the election. Now, proponents for past proposals of a federally backed 5G from the Trump administration have pushed for this national network idea as a way essentially to edge out China in the race to build the next generation wireless technology. And we have seen China move at rapid pace to deploy 5G technology essentially from east to west, north to south in that country, and have seen some pretty amazing things, such as an actual live remote surgery done over 5G, where a doctor on one side of China was remote controlling a robot on the other side. So they are really moving forward at breakneck speed. They also see this as a bid to bring high-speed wireless internet to rural America, and that is something that I think is very important, because we have a disparity in our internet infrastructure across the United States at the moment. You go into any major urban center or around the urban center and you get excellent bandwidth. You go out in a farm country and you're stuck on satellite or some kind of slow connection. This could possibly replace that, since 5G has the ability to just have a vastly faster internet connection than 4G or satellite in its traditional form. Now, interestingly enough, Eric Schmidt, the Google CEO, basically said the telecom, at a conference, he said last month that essentially the United States is falling behind China on 5G, And therefore, this is a national emergency for the United States, and the Pentagon standing up a network that it can share with the private sector is the United States' best chance of averting disaster. And I think this is actually really interesting because when you are looking at all of the infrastructure, the private sector infrastructures, around the United States, would they basically backbone on one infrastructure like Verizon that has a very large wireless infrastructure already around the United States? Or would they use a hodgepodge of, let's say, Verizon, AT&T, and all of the other carriers? Or would it be uniformed? Or if they are doing it themselves, this could obviously be a very serious issue because then a good swath of the United States may actually start using the government as their internet provider. And I think that's a very interesting thing in terms of privacy and communications. Can the internet from the government be censored or monitored or tracked in some way that isn't normally the way a private entity would do it? Or are they going to go even further than how the private entities track us? Because we know that the Verizons and the AT&T and Ts of the world track us. So that's a very interesting question. I think it's a very interesting proposal that they have here. The privacy wonk in me thinks I probably wouldn't want my internet connection coming from the government, but we may not actually have any kind of choice. And projects like this take years, which means even if President Trump is elected until 2024, the next president is going to go ahead and do this. Now, the other side of the aisle, the Democratic Party, because President Trump is a Republican, are seeming to be on board with a national infrastructure for data. Many people see the internet, especially access to high speed, as a great equalizer in terms of job opportunities, employment, education, and it is because we rely on the internet so heavily for absolutely everything. But this could be a potential game changer, bringing the Department of Defense into this. Now, it also makes sense from a cyber warfare, cybersecurity, and military standpoint to have a vast infrastructure like this that will allow rapid communication securely from coast to coast and possibly around the globe. But we're going to see what happens with this. I think this is very interesting for the day, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Should the Pentagon become an internet service provider to compete with the Verizons? Should they work in conjunction to build that network? Or would you be comfortable having the United States federal government as your internet service provider, knowing that they might be tracking you and data mining you like a private company, but they're the government? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, and that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.